Good day, folks. Here is another experiment I'm working on the side here. As you see, this is a very interesting transformer. I wanted to try something else here, similar to what we were doing with back EMF pulsing, but not exactly 100%. If you look closely at this coil I got here, this is more optimized for magnetic. I wanted to experiment with the magnetic potentials and magnetic couplings as well, more so than the electrical version. So to do that, I don't want to get into the details of it right now, but I did something very special to the core. So there's a core, but it's not in a traditional sense, and I'll get into that in later videos, but I just wanted to show you the progress I have so far of this idea of mine here. So we have the general, I cleaned it up, as you can see, my controller here. And very much like the back EMF, we pulse the coil that's all around here, thousands of turns basically. And as you can see with this setup, it's not an optimized for back EMF, right? So you only get a few volts of, well, not a few volts, but it's very similar. Like here I've got like a dead 9-volt battery, and the back EMF comes out at about 10, okay? So it's not optimized like it would be with a traditional like Bedini type coil, but I wanted to experiment with the magnetic, okay? So what happens is the core is electrically isolated, the core material, and I've got a tap that goes to the core here. And the idea that I'm trying to experiment with is use the back EMF as one magnetic potential with the coil itself, and then the core itself has another potential. So when I short out the core to the back EMF, here is the meter, we're tapping off those two potential differences. So the ideal thing to do here, which I will experiment with later, is you'd want to use two separate ground locations, and you would want to couple into the earth electrons during the magnetic loop. But since I don't have that, I wanted to run it against the core itself, which partially works, not as well, but will work to some degree, to experiment with it here. And sure enough, I will show you what happens here. I will energize this now. So I'm going to plug in the controller here. So the controller runs right now. I got the sweet spot, 1.55K at 1%. Okay, so we're going to have the meter here. So it's over. So we're getting like 25, 24 volts, okay? Which is good enough if we were to charge a, and remember, there's no capacitor yet. This is not quite accurate because it drives the meter a little unstable. I'd have to put a smoothing capacitor, but I just want to show you quickly here. And the core is connected. Look what happens when I disconnect the core. How drastic it is. If I can get it here. See, look at this. 6.8. Because my battery is dead here, it's got like 1.5 volts, and we're still getting a back EMF, but what I'm getting at is not the back EMF. What we're doing is creating potential differences, and the magnetic is creating the loop. It's not electrically looped, but once the magnetic action kicks in, then it couples it back into the circuit. So look what happens when I plug the loop back in. I'm just going to touch it. You see that increase right away. So the point here would be to either put this into the ground, have a fancy cap dump, or have a cap dump that brings the back EMF, so you have a jolt discharge through the core and then rectify that. There's a few methods, but I think I may be on to something here. And as you see, it takes as little power as the original, but does something completely different. And I wanted to use it more as an electron sucker, so I'm experimenting with this, and I'll give you little updates as I go along. I'm not done yet. It's a work in progress. See, I have these ring loops here, which is supposed to be extra tapping points. I'm gonna loop wire all around this, and maybe these could be mini cap dumps to re-gauge the system asymmetrically. So in the works, and I'll get into the core material in detail once I can figure out how to word everything here, because I did an experiment. Like I said, there's something special with the core. Alright, so let me all know what you think, and of course this is a bit different of the old way that I've been doing it. I've disclosed the old generator. If you're into, you know, charging capacitors and stuff using the Bedini methods, that all works. Very difficult to tune, but it will work. I had a consistent voltage raise for 1 week doing it with my generator disclosure. But again, as is, you're going to have to modify that if you want to go upscale. It's a teaching tool. So with that said, this is something different here I'm looking into. It's a prototype for something bigger I have in mind.